What's up guys, and welcome back to the Genshin Impact video. We're back with another character preview. We're looking at Yunjin today. She's a new character, polearm Geo, and she is very similar to the amazing Beidou in terms of just elemental skill and elemental burst functionality. Today we're going to be going over everything to do with her kit, from how her abilities work, weapon priority or best weapons, best artifacts, talent priority, constellations, going over all of them, seeing what's good, what's best, how amazing as a character she is, and quick spoiler, she's phenomenal, really great character. So without further ado, let's just get into it, starting off with the abilities. So let's take a look at her elemental skill. First, Opening Flourish is essentially like Beidou's elemental skill. It's just a counter or a kind of a block. So if you press it, you just deal a bit of geo damage in a circle around her, or if you hold it, you kind of do the Opening Flourish stance, forming a shield that absorbs 150% damage of all types of damage, so all elemental and physical. That's what's really good about this. And then it goes up to 2 different charge levels that have a different amount of damage, charge level 1 and 2. And this ability is really good because it's better than Beidou's counter on the basis of being a counter, because you're guaranteed the highest amount of damage even if you miss the counter correctly, because there is a talent that lets you counter, which is one of the passive talents. We'll talk about it in the passive talents, but essentially you get to charge level 2 damage no matter what. And the damage that the elemental skill does is based on your defense. At level 8 it is 596% of your defense at charge level 2, and then the shield absorption is based on your HP. And the reason this ability is so good is because obviously you can make it to dual damage, obviously combo with different characters, but as well as you can avoid mechanics and damage mechanics just by holding the skill at the right time. And because of that 150% absorption on the shield, you can just absorb almost every attack in the game, which is really cool. So her elemental burst, though, is a bit more of a mouthful to explain, so let's break this down really quickly. She presses her elemental burst, she does AoE geo damage, that's cool. When she does that, she gets the Flying Cloud Flag Formation buff, or essentially stance, I don't really know what to call it. And what this does is when your normal attacks damage is dealt to opponents, bonus damage will be dealt based on Yunjin's current defense. Now essentially, your character does 1000 damage, and then on top of that, it's essentially added onto the hit. It's not like another hit, you'll see. It's just added onto that initial bit of damage. And at level 1, it's 32% of Yunjin's defense will be just added onto your attacks. My Yunjin has 1400 defense, so 32% of 1400 will be added onto my normal attacks for every character. Now the big thing you need to take away from this is it's going to be for either the whole duration of 12 seconds, depending on how many hits you can get across in that time, or it's going to be for the next 30 normal attacks after you use Yunjin's burst. Because obviously this has a trigger quota. Trigger quota is a new thing added with Shenhe and Yunjin, where it's a specific amount of hits that can be buffed with this kind of ability. Onto the passives. The first passive is essentially you can do an auto level 2 charged hold form thingy just by pressing or holding your Opening Flourish or elemental skill at the correct time, just as you're about to be hit. If you just press the elemental skill button, you'll then do an automatic instant level 2 charged hit, which is just essentially how Beidou's things work. Second passive, though, is one that you have to take into consideration when building her for her elemental burst usage. The normal attack damage bonus granted by her elemental burst is further increased based on the elemental variety you have in the team. So having each character on your team be a different element will grant you a different bonus bit of defense percentage onto Yunjin's elemental skill boosting. Everyone is the same element, 2.5%, 2 different elements, 5%, 3 different elements, 7.5%, and everyone is a different element, 11.5%. You have to take this into consideration because obviously you don't want to rock 3 Geo characters and then 1 Cryo, and then you're just getting 5% versus getting 11.5%, which can be a pretty big difference. So take that into consideration when you're building for her burst. And then her last passive is just cooking for on adventure related effects. I'm not sure what that means. I think that's like the stamina stuff. It's not that important. Now let's talk talent priority. This is a big one, and it all depends on how you want to use the character. If you want the character to be a full support, then I highly advise you go for Cliffbreaker's Banner, her elemental burst. This one is probably her best support ability, especially if you want to combo with someone who is an auto attack character, potentially Yanfei, Ningguang, Keqing, any character who uses their auto attacks, specifically the normal attacks. This does not apply to charge attacks, so I can't really recommend Arataki Ito because it's not on the charge attacks. but so any character that uses their normal attacks as damage, I don't really know any other characters like Fischl, like Machine Gun Fischl, Yoimiya even. Yoimiya is a great option. That is what I'd recommend the burst for. But if you want to use the character as a potentially elemental skill battery for Geo, I guess, you can use the elemental skill. And that is what I've kind of built. I kind of want to just be able to switch her in, do a massive hit of damage really quickly, and then switch the character out. So that's why I've leveled up the elemental skill. And it all depends on your personal preference. Personally, I wouldn't level up her element or her auto attacks at all. I don't really see value in this. Obviously, it could be different scaling, I'm not sure. So the hierarchy is essentially, or the order is, Cliff Breaker's Banner for support, Opening Flourish for some kind of like sub DPS, like, or co DPS, and then normal attack is if you really want to main DPS the character. Now let's talk constellations. Yunjin is amazing in constellations. Let me just preface this by saying that all her constellations are really good. Starting off with C1, we've got Thespian Gallop, reduces the cooldown of her elemental skill by 18%. I don't have to say anything else. It's just amazing. It's just an amazing constellation. So C1, get C1. That's all I'm saying. C2, another great constellation. I don't know why she has such good constellations, but after you use her elemental burst, all nearby party members' normal attack damage is increased by 15% for 12 seconds. This is a further boosting on the fact that she's a support character with her elemental burst boosting a normal attack damage. This further boosts it even more just by a flat percentage. Amazing constellation, like you can't go wrong with it. C4 though is an interesting one. You can get a lot of value out of this if you play correctly, but when Yunjin triggers a crystallization reaction or crystallized reaction, her defense is increased by 20% for 12 seconds. Now this is a really good constellation if you can kind of synchronize yourself and play the character correctly. If you time your reaction application and ability execution correctly, this can be a really good constellation. 20% defense is a massive increase. And essentially, if you do her elemental skill, get a crystallization reaction off, and then go into her burst to get a massive boost through that, then that can be really good. Or you can do it vice versa and you want to get a bigger hit for her elemental skill. You cast her burst first, do the crystallized reaction, and then go into her elemental skill, deal a lot of damage. A very good thing either way, but it requires a bit more of precise gameplay. And now her C6, which is probably one of the better C6s in kind of the game, just because of personal preference for me. Honestly, characters under the effects of her elemental burst have their attack speed increased by 12%. Normal attack speed, I should say, no, not charge attack, but their normal attack speed. This is really good for the pure fact that it's one of the only characters. I think Beidou is the only other character who has this. Beidou has this as her level 60 or level 70 passive talent, where they get an attack speed on their burst. Yunjin now has it as a thing for her C6. When you cast her burst, you get a 12% attack speed increase, which is very good for characters like Eula. You can combo Eula with you know, if you just want a lot of attack speed on Eula just specifically, you get her weapon, the flagship weapon, you get Beidou, you get Yunjin, and you get another character. You just cast their burst, go into Eula, and she's just blitzing every enemy. And I think that's really cool. Adding attack speed as a buff is a really good idea in my honest opinion. In terms of weapons, this is really kind of bad to say, but the deathmatch is probably her best weapon out of the 4 stars. And that's really bad to say because it is the battle pass weapon, so it's not free to play friendly. But there's no defense boosting weapon in any way, shape, or form other than the deathmatch. There's none of the spears currently in the game boost defense in any way other than the deathmatch, and that is really unfortunate. These spears here I can recommend out of the 4 stars. But there's like, out of the 5 stars, essentially any of them would work, because none of them are defense boost, so they're all essentially the same. If you need crit rate, go for the Jade Primordial. If you need crit damage, go for the Staff of Homer. If you need attack, which I don't, you don't need attack on Yunjin because defense scaling. But yeah, the deathmatch is her best weapon because it has both attack boosting and more so defense boosting capabilities. Currently though, no defense weapons for the spear, no defense polearms, no nothing like that. Unfortunate as it is, that is really just how it is. And then on to the artifacts. Now, don't look at my artifacts. I don't have any of her best, which her best is unsurprisingly, Husk of Opulent Dreams. That is because of the defense boosting. That's really all it is. The geo damage and the defense boosting is the reason it's the best. Can't really go wrong with it in any way, shape, or form. Some close contenders, I can say, like, let's say 2-set Husk of Opulent Dreams and 2-set Archaic Petra, maybe, just if you're trying to go for a bit more consistency, because, you know, Husk of Opulent Dreams 4-set is a bit kind of hard to do with Yunjin just because you can't have it on field all the time, but there's no other set that I can recommend. Everything else is just kind of doesn't synergize with her well or doesn't work entirely. So it's either 4-set Husk of Opulent Dreams or 2-set Husk, 2-set Archaic Petra. I wouldn't go with anything else. The 2-set Archaic, 2-set Husk will give you more consistency, but I think overall in terms of damage, 4-set Husk of Opulent Dreams is probably the best one to go for. And that is my Yunjin preview. I hope you guys enjoyed. My final kind of opinion or take on Yunjin is she's really good. I think she's better than Beidou personally, just because it feels a lot better. Just the character itself feels better, feels a bit more whole. They are essentially the same character, essentially, just different element. Elemental skill works identically. Elemental burst works very, very similarly in terms of just adding damage to the kind of field. But personally, Yunjin just feels better to me, so I'll be definitely building her. And if you want to see more gameplay of her in the future, come by the stream. I stream here on YouTube most nights, Australian Eastern Standard Time. Yunjin is an amazing character. I think she's great. One thing that miHoYo needs to really do though is just add a defense weapon that actually has defense as a substat. There just isn't one, so I hope they do add one soon so Yunjin can reach her actual potential. But for now, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like it and also consider subscribing to the channel. I really would appreciate it. Hitting 1,000 subscribers would be an absolute dream. Thank you all so much for watching. Have an amazing day and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.